Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Examining the State of the Current Urgent Care Industry. This webinar is being presented to you by the Ambulatory M&A Advisor, an online publication that focuses on various areas in the healthcare field. I'm your host, Richard Romero, and I'm happy to introduce to you today's panelists. Speakers on this important topic are Dr. Robert Graw, CEO of Righttime Medical Care, Blayne Rush, President and owner of Ambulatory Alliances, LLC. Manoj Kumar, CEO of Hometown Urgent Care, and Dr. Peter Lamelas, CEO of MD Now Urgent Care. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Before we dive into the main questions from our panelists, please keep in mind that any questions you may have for them will be answered at the end of our presentation. All you need to do is send it over to me in the question box, and I will hold on to it until the official Q&A at the end. Without further ado, we'll move into question number one. With the Affordable Care Act and its triple aim, where does urgent care fit? Blayne, I believe you have something to say on that topic.
Yeah, so, conceptually, and I say conceptually because I believe where it sits now is different than what it was sold to us. But, since the Affordable Care Act went into effect, millions of residents have supposedly been required to get an insurance plan for the first time. And from some of the more recent reports, it doesn't look like it has turned out as planned, and, the concept is that the more people that are insured, the increase of utilization. But, from what I've seen, regardless if there's more insured or not, if you look at where healthcare is going and we compare that where urgent care is, we'll see almost a pure overlap in the sense of, with healthcare as triple aim, demanding lower cost, increased access, quicker access, and better quality of care. We can't always tell better quality of care, but, for sure, urgent care sits right there as a lower cost access point and better customer service, consumerism, etc. And that's what patients are looking for. That's what people want. Primary care is booked up. A lot of those guys are involved with disease management, diabetes, hypertension, wellness checks, that type of stuff. And you have a long wait to get into those guys anyway. And so I believe that that urgent care hits on all three of those. And regardless of where the payer system goes, no matter if it's 100% out-of-pocket cash payer or a 20% co-payer, urgent care is going to win. I think if you go out and ask everybody, the doctors see the value, payers see the value, private equity sees the value, hospitals see the value, and we're starting to see a lot of other ambulatory players that are seeing the value, and they're moving into that space in a big way. I think also, and additionally, I think historically there's not been a great deal of collaboration amongst hospitals, doctors, other providers, and payers. The new healthcare economy is driving more innovation and more innovative collaboration and more relationships, and I think urgent care is driving a lot of that. We'll see all of the different players that I just mentioned be in the same platform. So I think urgent care is sitting well, and I think it's going to play well regardless of where the payer system goes.
All right, thank you, Blayne. Dr. Graw, do you have anything to add to that? I know you were interested in that question as well.
Well, I always describe that urgent care is in the sweet spot. Okay, we are at the interface of how healthcare can be delivered, recognizing that there are too few primary cares and that even those that exist are not available. So when they decide to go home or their schedules are too full, they're going to reach out for alternatives, and they have the retail clinics, the hospital emergency rooms, or they have us. And I think it's up to the urgent care systems to be able to deliver a product which is cost effective, quality, and integrates well into the primary care or hospital system they're affiliated with.
I could mention something about that. The triple aim, this is Dr. Lamelas, triple aim, was actually a goal of the Institute of Healthcare Improvement And I was doing did a little quick research on it. It basically, the triple aim was, one, improving the individual experience of healthcare, number two, improving the health of populations, and number three, decreasing the per capita overall cost of that population. I think urgent care definitely checks off the individual experience of care. That's easy to quantify. It's easy to measure. We have certain organizations doing accreditation and certification. We're open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That is, we check that box off, no problem. The issue with improving the health of populations is that it's a little difficult to measure that from an urgent care perspective at the current time. I think urgent care is headed in that direction with data gathering and EMR and working with insurance companies and ACOs. And I think we're going to be much more able to prove that in the near future. Decreasing the per capita cost of care for a population is also a challenge, but I think urgent care does improve, decrease the cost of hospitalization and ER care, and but that metric is also needs to be gathered and proven to legislative people to show that urgent care is a much more cost-effective model.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lamelas. We're moving on to question number 2. What is population health and how will urgent care fit in? Dr. Graw, what do you think?
You know, population health is one of these things that has been, examined for a long time, and people trying to understand whether it's a certain group of patients that you're taking care of or whether there are other groups that individually may be lumped together. So you may have a race and ethnicity question, gender question, you may have an employer question, or you may have the health of the population in your community. So I think that as we begin to look at what the outcomes of population health what needs to be measured, then the urgent care can field the problems and do a good job. So if you've got patients in your community that are, again, integrated into the healthcare system already, not just somebody who stops by, and they have problems with obesity or diabetes type 2 or the hypertension, the kinds of identifiable problems we see each day, we can begin to play an important role in managing that for the patients that are coming from the primary care or from the healthcare system.
Thank you, Dr. Graw. Manoj, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I agree what Dr. Graw is saying, absolutely. But I look from a very macro point of view too. If you look at our country, so far our healthcare system has not been able to contain the chronic diseases which consume 80% of our healthcare. We still have a situation where our population has a very high rate of diabetes and conditions like that compared to many countries in the world. So there is something as a holistic view or a whole health view we have not been able to provide. Now, could it be because the primary care doctors, they are still struggling to provide a balance between seeing 30 patients they have to churn out in a day and providing a holistic full health to their patients? Or it could be because our healthcare system is too close where the data about our population is shown to the population only when they are sick. And I think all these drivers, urgent care is one of the entities like everybody talked about, where we are more driven to provide a better outcome from a consumer perspective. We are more driven to engage with our payers to provide a better outcome to our patients and reduce the cost. So our motivations are there to create those transparencies in the system, whether it is for the patient or for the payer. So I think urgent cares are more motivation and driven to participate in the population health. But the bigger factor which I see in our markets is that we are seeing a higher percentage of people who do not have a primary care, or they don't want a primary care. I think as a society we are seeing some fundamental changes where we want instant gratification, all of us. So that is one factor which we are seeing where the appointments and wait times are a factor in the consumer choices, which are big time. The second, which we are seeing, is the information the consumers have about the healthcare. We are seeing a shift in the perception of a doctor compared to 20 years back and now. I think these are very powerful trends which are in the market now. How does urgent care play a role in all the market? First is large section of millennium generation, including the people under 40. They are not going to primary care. They don't have this control mechanism for controlling their health. So I think what Dr. Graw talked about, urgent cares will have to play a bigger role, and the payers will have to give us a bigger role in managing or at least identifying those threat factors for a wide variety of population which doesn't go to primary care. So urgent care, I think in the long term, not only is a choice of the consumer, because of which we will have to play a bigger part, but also because of the primary care constraints which are there, we will have to play a bigger part in population management. And I think we have the drive to do it. So I see it's a very exciting time in the next 10 years for urgent care.
Thank you so much. The next question we have is, what challenges will narrow network plans present to urgent care? What steps can be taken to overcome them? Dr. Lamelas, what do you think of that?
Well, I think the challenges are more towards the urgent cares that don't participate in the narrow network. And those are going to be the smaller mom and pop urgent cares. The larger integrated networks of urgent cares over a region or an area are obviously going to have to participate. They're going to be sought out to participate in those networks. MD Now, for example, we have agreements with all the major insurance companies, and we use our leverage of our tri-county expanded facilities from Palm Beach all the way 110 miles down to Cutler Bay to be able to get on these networks. We've negotiated almost preferred nation status, as you could say, with these insurance companies to be on their networks. And obviously, the bigger players are going to try to exclude any competition in the area from getting on those networks. The thing to do is to be able to participate. Otherwise, you're going to be shut out, and you're going to lose those patients.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lamelas. Dr. Graw, what's your opinion on that question?
Well, I think that initially the payers are looking at pricing and quality, right? So if you're going to be too expensive, they're going to exclude you immediately. I think as it matures, you have to differentiate yourself based on the services that you offer, the technology that you represent. Do you have an EHR that's integrated with hospital systems and with insurance companies? Insurance companies now are collecting a lot of information from urgent cares and using that to help them with their own ideas of how the population can be managed. And then finally, are you going to do something as forward-looking as telehealth? And people that are looking at urgent care networks are saying, what can you do for my patient now? The employee, the patient is saying, what can you do for me now? When you differentiate yourself in these categories, you will not be excluded from the network.
Thank you, Dr. Graw. Blayne, what are your thoughts?
So narrow networks, they're nothing new. I mean, I cut my teeth in the 1990s, and they were there then. They were called HMOs back then. But essentially, what they're there for is to drive the premiums down and the cost down from from conceptually. It doesn't always work, because one of the issues that you have, even with these big health systems that are integrating, is that you have these leakage. So there's a significant amount of leakage that happens within these networks, and you talk about the mom and pops. Well, those guys can be there to collect that leakage. And whenever you look at the insurance, so we have these higher deductibles, these higher co-pays, etc. Well, if you have a $50 copay, okay, and you have a urgent care center that's up the road from you, but the one that's in your network is significantly up the road from you, and you already know that you're going to have to pay a $50 copay, and you can have one up here that's $100, give or take, for out-of-pocket cash, then those guys are going to look at it and say, okay, we're just going to accept the pure cash pricing and go that route. And I think that's one of the ways that a lot of urgent care can look at it is, hey, make sure that you have some, excuse me, some, excuse me again, some situation for those guys. And also, I think whenever you go to those guys, meaning to sign up and to negotiate with those guys, you have to have your data, and accreditation comes into effect as well. There's a lot of these urgent care centers that aren't accredited out there, and there's only so many ways that the payers and some of those networks are able to determine the quality of your program, and accreditation is one way that you can stand out.
And Richard, I have a couple of thoughts if I can get a couple of minutes about it on this topic.
Sure.
Good. I just want to talk about a personal experience for hometown with a payer specific to that outcome discussion, and I just want to chat briefly why I feel we have a disadvantage right now, and lastly, just a couple of thoughts on what can we do. So one of the payers came to us last year about HEDIS measures, which I think most of the primary care doctors have to comply with. And one of the measures was outcome, which tracks the prescription of antibiotics to children under age of 18 who have a viral URI symptom. So they came to us saying that our prescription of antibiotics were higher than compared to average primary care. We were still highest, best in the urgent care industry. So we have an EHR, we have our own BI system, so we were able to identify which providers were prescribing antibiotic, and most of our providers, they feel very passionate about handling this antibiotic problem. As a nation, we have the highest rate of antibiotic prescription and narcotic prescription. So our payers feel very passionate about it, that for our generation, we cannot make them immune to antibiotics. So it was very easy sell to the payers. We just wanted to identify it. There was some concern about patients would not be happy, but we said, okay, we've got to do it. So in 3 months' time, we were able to take our compliance rate from 69% to 93.3% for that particular age group and condition. Now it has been 9 months since then. We have been talking to the same payer, which is one of the big payers, to talk about renegotiating the rates, because we still have very old rates with them. And you tell you, they have no motivation to engage in discussion. They have not engaged in discussions with us, even though we proved the outcome better for them on a very clear metrics which help them save the money. And I think one of the reasons for this is that because they know the market is very fragmented. They know that there are too many urgent care coming up, with retail clinic coming up, with telemedicine. They have no motivation to negotiate, even though we have a better outcome. So question is that what do we do? And I think that for urgent care industry, as a group, we need to find and come together and somehow reinforce to these payers various facts. First is the quality, cost, all the matrix of ACO we talked about, but also the fact that over 30% or 40% of population who are under 40 years of age or less, they don't want to go to primary care. They will come to urgent care. So it is better that urgent cares are put in the same integrated system, and they don't have to pay that kind of higher copay, and their values are understood. But I don't know the answer to it, but I think as an industry, we got to do something, come together and approach these payers to see what are the challenges. Why do they treat us still as stepchild? Why we have 3 times more copay than primary care doctors? And they're not engaging with us even on the quality outcomes. So I'm just opening this question or discussion point that the
Thank you, Manoj. We're going to have to move on to question number 4. We do actually start with you. Where does urgent care fit into ACOs, and how has this impacted the urgent care industry, Manoj?
I think, urgent care is integral part of ACOs. If the core of ACOs is what we talk about, 3, to reduce the cost and better outcome, and without urgent care, it's very difficult to provide that. Even if they want to get the medical homes after our care, they cannot provide without urgent care. But I see it from the point of view of core of what ACOs are trying to do is in aligning with the facts which we all discuss about the cost, health, and quality of care. And with this huge population which is growing every day, who don't want to be in a primary care system, I think urgent cares are the necessary element of healthcare delivery system. And ACOs will have to work with urgent care, whether they own it or whether they have collaboration agreements, which we are seeing across the country on this. So
wonderful.
Thank you.
Dr. Lamelas, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to take a second of my question, just like in the debates, and address the previous question real quick about narrow networks. I think one of the interesting things that are going on is because the deductibles are so high and because the copays are so high, coming to urgent care, especially in the beginning of the year, is almost like a self-pay proposition. So yeah, we could use that. We could use that as a lever to try to gain access to those networks, because the insurance companies overall are having less responsibility for out-of-pocket. I mean, for payment, and those responsibilities are going more onto the patient's head, especially with the Affordable Care Act. On the issue of ACOs, I just was meeting this morning with one of the largest ACOs in the country. Happens to be here in South Florida. They've actually, not till like this year, have we done anything at all with any ACOs around. And this year, it's been amazing. I've been approached by 3 different ACOs. We've been in negotiation and discussion with a couple of them. And I think what they're really interested in is data management. They want to make sure when their patients come to our facilities that our doctors, our EMR is capable of sending them information electronically so they're able to manage those patients. They want to know statistics, metrics, how many patients get referred from us to the ER. They would prefer to do direct admissions. We're working on that, and I think that is really the future, especially for Medicare ACOs. As far as commercial ACOs, that's the next big thing in the picture. And that is actually interesting because I think urgent care is very used to dealing with commercial patients. Commercial patients are going to be much more harder to manage in a commercial ACO than Medicare managed care HMO type patients. And those people have right now the ability to go to any place that they want and be seen by anyone they want to see, and that's a majority. A lot of our patients are basically going to be those commercial ACO patients. That's why I think it's important to build a relationship with the ACOs now, not only for their Medicare ACO patients, which are the highest cost and the highest benefit for them, because if we save those physicians money, they stand to do really well. If we show them that we could save them over needless ER visits and ER admissions. And right now is a good opportunity to get involved with these local ACOs, because they're going to be expanding into the commercial line of business, and they could potentially direct those patients to another urgent care other than your urgent care if you're not in negotiation and discussion with them early on.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Graw, we're going to kick off the next question with you. What are some of the current threats and opportunities in the urgent care market right now?
We've talked about a lot of them. The narrow networks clearly are the big worry for everybody, whether you're big or small. I know somebody said the ones and twosies, but anybody, if a price-conscious patient and or insurer wants to talk about money, you can't outprice the market. Primary cares are being offered more money to do patient-centered medical home, and against the best efforts of most family medicine and internists, They are staying in their offices. They're having Saturday and Sunday hours. So clearly they're offering the competition right in their offices. And then the services that are offered. You know, if we do not offer the complement of services that people are seeking, then people will be left out. You won't have the opportunity to serve them. In our arena up here in the Northeast, retail clinics are coming out more all the time, and they're increasing their scope of services. They don't have x-ray right now, but they may. And pretty soon a retail clinic staffed by a mid-level PA or nurse practitioner will be able to do what is done in many of the urgent care operations in our area. So I think the opportunities are to be aware of the market, to recognize that you need to respond to the opportunities, whether they be on a commercial level where you're dealing with an employer, a hospital system that's looking for a post-hospital discharge evaluation to avoid readmission, or doing a higher level of medicine than they can do in a retail clinic. So the threats are real. The opportunities are great, however, because we can do all of these things. We just need to recognize we can't sit still.
Thank you, Dr. Graw. Manoj, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Grass, and just add on the opportunity side, you know, which you mentioned that in our markets we are seeing every year a higher percentage of population who doesn't have a primary care, and even if they have it, it has been 2-3 years they have been to the primary care model. So definitely the shift in the core population towards urgent care or segments of urgent care, which could be retail clinic or in future telemedicine, is definitely a shift in the consumer towards urgent care side. Obviously second is the attrition of ER. We are seeing in our markets a higher percentage of people who have some kind of injury. So we are seeing trends toward that. We are also seeing trends toward workers' comp injuries. They are moving towards urgent care instead of patient going to the ER or specialized workers' comp clinic. So these are, I think, these are the opportunities which all of us we are seeing, and I know for the future opportunities lies in how we integrate the technology and create transparencies for the consumer, whether on the pricing, whether on the wait time, and whether on the outcome. So I think that's a great amount of opportunity for urgent care players because technology is driving consumers' patterns tremendously. And lastly, what Peter talked about, the opportunities of collaborating with ACOs and also some payers who are willing to work with urgent care. I gave you one example of a payer, but we have other examples of payers who are motivated to work with us to improve the outcomes, and they are ready to divert the traffic because we are collaborating more. We are working with workers' comp itself, which we are seeing very progressive thought processes in those payers. So I think overall, all these put together, there are tremendous opportunities. We do have some challenges, which we talked about, the payers-wise, you know, who still want to have a higher copay for us. The second challenge is the competition by the players who are not motivated to be a serious player in urgent care. They want to open 1, 2, 3 because they went to a conference and they came, you know, so there's a kind of gold rush. But that will, you know, settle. We have started to seeing some break in the market from those mom and pops. They have understood that, you know, this industry or this service section needs much more serious effort. So I think we are seeing some early signs of that, and next few years, as the market stabilizes to more standardized care, more serious players, the opportunities will be immense for the players who can provide all these things together.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manoj. Dr. Lamelas, what are your thoughts?
We're still on the threats and opportunities. Well, I echo everything that's been said. And I think it depends on, you know, if you're looking at this from an industry-wide perspective or the threats and opportunities to your individual facilities in your market area. And I think they're basically two different things. I think, but one you know, insurance companies are both a threat and an opportunity. I think you could see some of the payers in certain parts of the country are starting to narrow their networks. They're starting to reduce their rates. They use an opportunity of a little facility opening down the road willing to take a lower rate of reimbursement to try to force your rates down. I think that's something over time, the smaller players will fall off and go out of business, but the smaller mom and pops coming into the market do force or try to provide an opportunity for the insurance companies to lower your rates, which are a threat. An opportunity, on the other hand, is we've been improving our relationships with all the payers. We've been looking to do something beyond urgent care. We have agreements with some payers to help do their medical evaluations. A lot of payers received a bunch of patients from Obamacare, and they've been very successful, almost too successful, with a lot of people enrolling. And these patients need to be seen and evaluated by somebody, and that information needs to be transmitted to a PCP. The PCPs don't have the capacity, they don't have the capability of doing that. Well, we, MD Now, stepped right in to help them with that solution. We've negotiated rates to do initial visits on these patients, get them screened, transmit the information to the PCP. Our biggest driver for patients coming back to us, more than any advertising we do, is getting the patients in the door one time. That first visit for anything, a drug screen, a fingerprint, an urgent care visit, whatever we need to do to get that patient in the door. This is another opportunity to get that patient in the door one time, work with the insurance company, and transmit that data. That patient will come back again when they sprain their ankle, have a sore throat, have bronchitis, need stitches, or need any urgent care. So that's just one example. I think one of our biggest threats and opportunities is basically the insurance industry, finding out how to work with them, how to make sure that our rates, a rising tide lifts all boats, how to make sure we get the best possible rate, whether we have to leverage the size of our market area, how much penetration we have in the market area, and or our relationships with our corporate partners. If we do workers' comp or occupational medicine for a large employer that has Blue Cross or Aetna or Cigna, we have to leverage that relationship to try to get the best and highest rate possible from the insurers.
All right,
and
wonderful.
then, Richard, just to add, if you just a couple of minutes, I think one more opportunity for all of in the industry is for a brand name, a patient experience, which can be connected with a name. 20 years back, 15 years back, even 10 years back, the healthcare is very localized, and the thoughts were there, can you establish a brand? But now we are seeing that patients make a choice if the brand or the name can provide a consistent patient experience. So that is also a great opportunity for the urgent care industry as it consolidates in the future, and people who provide a consistent level of care and patient experience in their clinics.
Excellent point. All right, so the next question, we're going to start off with Blayne. We're looking into your world. What does M&A look like for urgent care in the current market, and do you see any prevailing trends?
I think we all understand this is the market's busy. I've been predicting, predicted last year and early this year that hospitals overall will move more aggressively into the urgent care space than they have in a large way. They're either partnering with urgent care management and development companies, or they're buying centers or buying platforms. There's a number of hospital systems that are looking for a platform to buy, but this is getting tougher. There's not many of those guys still out there as far as platforms go of size. So I think that urgent care companies with hospital JV models are well positioned for growth, especially in that space. A couple other observations: the deal sizes are getting smaller. That's where the majority of the opportunities are. Smaller as in the number of clinics that a business owns. There's probably 60% of what's out there is owned by 3 and less type clinics. Sellers are becoming a little more sophisticated. And I believe that's a good thing all around. The pricing of smaller deals are ticking up a little bit, but I think the the large or the very large deals are flat to a little down. So I've seen some large platform transactions that ended up not happening here recently because the sellers could not get the price they wanted. I'm not really ready to say that the huge multiples that everyone has discussed over the last few years are gone just yet, but I think we've seen the peak as far as the multiples go. The investors appear to be less ready to pay for the hyper growth rates that have been projected out there and predicted. Some of the larger players that have been on the sidelines, they're preparing to execute on some growth. Those guys that have had new investors, so the old investors exited, new investors come in, they have growth capital injected into their businesses. So competition for the most attractive centers or cluster of centers is up, and I think we'll see a peak as far as the number of buyers within the next year or so that enter in the market at one time. I think that some buyers are becoming more critical in their evaluation of their target, which tells me that those are preparing for an exit. They're not pulling their trigger on deals that they might have pulled the trigger on 12 or 18 months ago. In many markets or sub-markets, if you will, the saturation. I believe it was spoke about before. Some are overbuilt, and this matters as far as M&A because there's, some of these sellers out there, the mom and pops, 3 or 4 centers have been toying with the idea of selling, have toyed with some of the buyers, if you will, and I guess they're waiting for some magic to happen before they commit to selling. I just had a conversation with a client recently that, the first offer was a very good offer, but I think they're waiting to see is there anything better, and what some of these guys are going to end up, because when the market's moving like it's moving and everybody's playing musical chairs, someone's going to end up without a chair when the music stops. So I think people need to look at that as well.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Blayne. Manoj, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with what Blayne is saying. The markets, on one level, we are seeing the mom and pops, onesies, twosies, they are facing the challenge because first, they cannot provide the comprehensive urgent care and OCMED model. It needs a lot of work rather than just opening the system. And in any new business, first year is always the fun. Second year we can try. The operator wants to try different things. Any business. And third year is a time when people start really questioning, what did I get into? And it's a great thing to do urgent care. It's a great service to the community and people, but somewhere the math has to work for everyone. And the challenges of a small operator, 1 or 2 or 3 urgent care will remain, especially with the retail clinics coming up, the big players expanding, and also telemedicine coming up. The pie is growing, but it is still, it's not growing as fast as new opportunities are coming. So only the people who can provide the patient experience, they will see the patient loyalty sticking to them. On the M&A side, I think we are seeing the second round of consolidation by large players, and I think Blayne is very much to the heart of what is happening in the industry. From our viewpoint, what we definitely see is some smaller groups, like 1 or 2 or 3 urgent care, they have started to feel the pressure of operating profitably those centers. So I think there'll be some clearing up in the market where those urgent cares either will be acquired by the regional players or they will have to close down. But people who are doing a good job, they will survive. Definitely, I think ultimately it comes down to who is truly committed to what we are about, providing a great care, consumer-driven, at a low cost and a high quality. So that's all.
Excellent. Let's see, Dr. Lamelas, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I sort of agree with Blayne, but this is the only caveat. I think the multiples are still going to stay high, but there's going to be a flight to quality, just like in the stock market. people are going to pay a higher multiple for a higher quality group of centers. And that doesn't necessarily mean size, right? There was a recent deal that came out that didn't go through, but it was a very large provider, but there were issues with that provider, with that urgent care provider. So that's why there's going to be a flight to quality, and the multiples will still remain high with a quality provider of urgent care that has enough facilities to be attractive, because the industry's still growing, there's still a value proposition, and the industry's still fragmented. There's going to be, and actually the long-term value proposition is really compelling. It really is compelling for the right provider of urgent care services, not necessarily the single onesie, twosie, 2 or 3 facility provider. Those are going to have to roll up and be consolidated. Or there may be a little niche provider, boutique urgent care, that could stay in business somewhere in the country where they're providing more customized VIP type service. Yes, but the 2 or 3 center operator is going to feel intense pressure to be consolidated. I think urgent cares are going to have to show something much more than open 24/7, great customer service. They're going to have to look at referral rates to the hospital, referral rates to specialists, referral rates to the emergency department. That is what's going to give an urgent care facility much higher value, a much higher multiple, especially if the hospitals are getting into the game, because the hospitals are going to use this as a way to maintain market share. On the other hand, if the insurance companies are getting into the game, the insurance companies don't want the hospitals to grab market share and have accelerated cost. And maybe outpatient pricing for urgent care centers where there would be a facility fee and a professional fee, and they're going to want to maintain that cost savings. So I think depending on the location in the country that you're at, depending on the type of model you have, depending on how broad over a region, you still are going to get a higher multiple. It depends on, everything is local. Like politics, medicine is local, and you can't cast a broad net over everything. But the high valuations, the crazy deals that are being thrown around on the urgent cares that can't show their value, I think are really gone.
Thank you, Dr. Lamelas. We're going to move on to the next question. And where are you seeing growth of platforms, through de novos or acquisitions? Dr. Graw?
Well, the question is a little vague, but if you're talking about people coming up with more innovative ways to do it or more consistent ways to perform healthcare, it's harder than it used to be, because people have been working for a long time now, 20 plus years, in trying to understand how to take a industry that everybody's been calling fragmented, but which, if you go to the Urgent Care Association, they cannot even define, somebody who's doing pure urgent care. It can be availability, it can be the services that you offer, it can be the staff that are there. You can say that you've had certain kinds of credentialing or certification, but it's harder than it used to be to come up with a new de novo platform. Now what needs to be done is to take the best and refine those, and then probably make sure that you can have an opportunity to go into the market if you're de novo, meaning reimbursement and credentialing. We talked a little bit about it with the neural networks. We heard testimonials with the urgent care group the last time we got together, where there are people trying to open up urgent care systems in big cities, and they cannot have insurance companies even credential the physicians, okay? So they can build them, but they can't open them, they can't operate them. I think it's important for anybody in urgent care now, Peter summarized it extremely well, to be able to integrate with your vicinity. If you are not integrating with somebody, you will die. Either a health system, an ACO, a patient-centered medical home, a group of primary care providers. You cannot go out there and put up your shingle and say, well, I'll take care of you when you're sick, and survive in this competitive environment. I think there will be acquisitions. I think it's difficult for some of the groups that are getting bigger to suddenly be acquired by somebody else. The culture of these are different. The services are different. I think if you're ones or choosy, yes, it's probably a good time to let somebody slip you under their wing. But I think that it's different now. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago, where anybody with a MD or DO could go out there and open up an urgent care and have people line up and get paid for the services. It's a very complicated business market and healthcare market.
Very good, Dr. Graw. Dr. Lamelas, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I saw the question, the growth of platforms through de novo or acquisitions. You know, just from personal experience, we've had I went to Alaska a long time ago, and there were a lot of men in Alaska, and only a few women. So my wife was talking, boy, if you're a woman, you want to go to Alaska to get married. But, you know, in Alaska, what it was is the odds are good, but the goods are odd. You know, it's very, there's a lot of unusual people there. So the same thing, with urgent cares, with acquisitions. The odds are good, but the goods are odd. It's difficult to acquire growing if you have a sophisticated model to acquire somebody and pay a multiple that they think they're worth that because they're a doctor and they started the facility and they think they have goodwill and they put all this effort and time into it, but they're not making any money or very little money. So from our perspective, we've always it's much more cost effective for us to do de novos, to do de novo locations. It costs less money. We could get the best location. We could put up a great facility. We have all our marketing dollars. We have economies of scale in this area, and we could put it's a lot more attractive for us to do that. Obviously, if the right acquisition comes along, we always look at that. I think now with the market being so hyper competitive and there's intense competition, I think some of the smaller operators hopefully will choose to see things differently, and they may be a little more easily acquired. But for us, de novo growth has always been the fuel that has driven our engine in this South Florida market.
Wonderful. Manoj, what are your thoughts?
You know, the way I see it, like, you know, I agree with Peter what he's talking about, that, you know, there's always a second comer advantage into a market, that, you know, if somebody's there and you come in second and you can put it on the right space and, you know, do it. I think it's also a matter of preference, or what the drivers are for the platform. You know, if they are seeking to grow fast, then acquisitions of onesies, twosies would make sense. The bigger acquisitions, I agree with Peter that they come with their own set of problem and cultural issues, and it's so difficult sometimes to get through the process there. But sometimes, you know, that is the only option available. Otherwise, if we go in a market and we want to get a de novo, it may take much more years it may be a lot of bleeding for everyone. So I think it depends on market to market, but surely that the bigger platforms, they want a share of the market space, and they want to establish in the market space. So I think it depends on opportunity to opportunity. But I do see that some of the markets are saturated, that starting a de novo and making it work and getting it to break-even point is not that easy, which used to be a long time back. So I would suspect that there will be more acquisitions in the marketplace if the players want to consolidate faster. And some of the local players, they're strong. It's not, you know, it's not easy to go in the market and just set up a box and think patients will come, because they improvise too, and some of them have very strong local connections. So I think it depends on the motivation, but for the right opportunity, we will see both of these things happening. And for us also, we are looking at both of these as we grow our platform.
Excellent, excellent answer. So we're down to the last question, and we're all going to get a chance to speak in on this one. Where is the market headed over the next few years as far as operational growth, expansion, and or M&A? We'll start with Dr. Graw, please.
Well, Richard, once again, I think there are people, despite what we've counseled them with on this call today, that are going to continue to open. They hope that they can put a shingle out there, interestingly, putting urgent care under their name on the road, and yet when we validate who they are, they're not credentialed as urgent care. They're simply people who are bringing a private practice, and they say, well, this could be a good way for me to fund my work, and so they put their name on the sign or come up with a cute name and say primary care and urgent care. The natural trend for those people is to be filled with primary care and no longer do urgent care. So I think there'll be a continued growth, an expansion of the ones and twosies over a short time, except in these very unique geographic areas that are super saturated. I think then we're going to consolidate. What I thought about saying when Peter was talking about the Alaska story, which I was chuckling about, is that, when we talk about aggregation, we're buying plumbing and we're buying patients. That's all we're getting. You're not buying staff, you're not buying culture. It's very difficult to change culture.
Really great answer. Blayne, what are your thoughts?
This was kind of mentioned a couple of times, but I'm going to mention again to give some context here. I believe that in the future, data and the availability to prove to payers that your unique model does save the system money and it does improve the quality, and that you're valuable, that you can treat higher acuity or advanced cases as well as the basic and the moderate is going to be a big thing that's in the future. Because if you, no one's mentioned this, interesting, but if you compare freestanding ERs to advanced urgent care centers, ones with expanded wave testing, point of care on-site, stat lab, CT scanners, ER-trained providers, that type of stuff, and then you look at it and say, what's the difference, other than the cost and the hour of operations? Because I'm working with one group that's been able to work with commercial payers and convince them that the level of service and the value to the patients and the community is huge, because they've been able to negotiate level 1 contracts that are above $200, and they have level 5 contracts above $600, which is like, really, I had to see it to believe it. And they've negotiated carve-outs for CT, advanced labs, that type of stuff. But the physician owners are comprised of specialty physicians that deal with some advanced disease. That's a growth area where some of these specialized centers that are supported by groups of specialists that can refer their patients there, keep them out of the ER, and can prove through data and whatever to these payers that they are valuable to their patients and they save money to the system. So I think that's that we'll see more of that. I think we'll see added and expanding services. I believe the innovators that understand that you can lower healthcare costs to the system while also increasing profitability to their business is where we're headed, and I think that's where urgent care fits in. I think urgent care is going to treat subacute issues, not just the acute type stuff. For example, full infusion centers within the urgent care. Significant cost saving to the system. It's very profitable to the urgent care. Patients love it. It increases your attraction to contracts with the ACOs and the narrow networks. But one thing I'd probably caution is that I get a lot of phone calls that these guys are adding this service or that service. For example, cosmetic stuff or hormonal therapy, etc. Well, that might work for you in your smaller market and your niche or whatever, but if you have any interest in selling out in the future as far as M&A, they're not going to give you any value for that, because unless they can turn around and roll that out to their other centers that they hold, it's not valuable to them. This was mentioned over and over. We're going to say it again. More collaboration and alliances. I think we're seeing hospitals in urgent care. We're seeing physician practices in urgent care, ambulatory surgery centers, and other ambulatory networks buying and partnering with urgent care. Employers in urgent care. You're going to see cities, municipalities partner with urgent care. And the good thing about urgent care, like was mentioned, you have a built-in patient population that you can tap into. As far as M&A goes, more consolidation. I mean, that's what the crystal ball tells me. One of the biggest challenges I'm seeing for sellers and investors is the deals or opportunities, like I said, are getting smaller. So because the top 20 platforms own less than 1,500 centers, so we're going to see the threes, 2-3 platforms. They're going to merge, try to figure out their stuff, and then go sell their platform. I think we'll see some of these 5s and a 5 and a 10 merge and become bigger, and then turn around and sell. Because I think it's well known that the larger you are, everything else being equal as far as the quality and that type of stuff that Peter was mentioning, but the larger you are, the higher the multiple. But the other thing is the deal sizes are getting smaller, like I mentioned, and for that is the work is harder, meaning that it's not that much harder to do a 10-center deal than it is to do a 3-center deal. It's a lot of work, but you have to do a lot more 3-center deals to get to the scale of a couple of 10-center deals to be able to make that work. So you guys have to be organized, have to be prepared whenever you go to market, because those buyers are going to say, man, I'm not dealing with this. Even though it could be a beautiful center, very profitable, yada, 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 they're going to look at it and say, man, I got to spend so much time on due diligence and whatnot. It's better for me with my limited time and resources to go somewhere else. So I think you'll see a bottleneck come pretty soon in the market as well, because the majority of the deals are going to be the smaller type deals. And again, the valuations, I think overall, I get that there's niches and whatnot. I don't think we've seen a 20 in the past. We're not going to see a 20 again. We've seen lots of 15 multiples in the past. I think we'll stay around those numbers for the foreseeable future. We're not going to see that 20 again. I think we'll see a downtick in the risk that some of these financial buyers are willing to take, and that's based off of the hyper growth that we saw, a few years ago isn't there anymore.
Okay, thank you, Blayne. Manoj, where do you think the market's headed in the next few years?
The way I see it, like for a long-term perspective, is that the need, let me rephrase it, the fundamental need for urgent care in the marketplace are only going to grow, because of the fact we talked about the push for faster, better healthcare, plus also the millennium generation, which needs instant gratification, and more of them want a service. So as this population who needs a service like urgent care that grows, I think consolidations and more expansions and even the MA will have to happen. Now, what multiples are going to be, only the market conditions will drive. But the way I see the trend is that it's a natural derivative of where we are is the next 5, 7, 10 years. The bigger groups will only get bigger. More so because technology can make the impact on the healthcare cost in a much bigger way than I see from my platform to get 10% more from payer. We are talking of a population management like we discussed, and the cost of those chronic diseases on our nation are huge. With the technology and with the drive to provide an open, transparent system, which urgent cares are and our urgent care operator are, I think with that they can show the values where the payers and many employers, many patients will be driven towards urgent care more and more. In that scenario, I see that in next 10 years we will see these groups who have really done a good job of growing, they only get bigger. And I won't be surprised we will have 1,000 or 1,500 group chains which really are able to break the local factor and establish a brand where people are choosing to go to that place for patient experience, not only for customer care perspective, but also from technology integration perspective. So think of a scenario if a patient comes to urgent care, and urgent care can tell them that based on your vitals or your BMI, you are 80% of population of your age. You know, the same kind of scale we have for the kids, the same scale and transparency can be there for urgent care or our patients, you know, which is more meaningful data than putting the data on the patient portal and putting on a medical record. All this data which is there is meaningless for the consumers right now, and it is not connected to their day-to-day application. So I think technology will drive a lot of integration where our healthcare will become more meaningful. But to drive that, you need scale. So I think, and the benefit of scale will be a huge saving because our population will be much better managed when they have those KPIs floating around them all the time, and that can change their behavior. So I see that urgent care, not only operation side, a lot of data transparency, a lot of technology input, but on more so on the expansion side, I see the bigger platform only getting bigger. And urgent care being not treated as an urgent care, but it is a very significant part of population management, which is driving consumer behaviors towards a better healthcare.
Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Lamelas, we're going to hear where you think the market's headed, and then we'll move on to a couple of questions from the audience.
Okay. Well, I think the market used to be extremely robust. I think it's probably robust now, but it depends on it. It's very selective. It's very selective. I think the industry is still growing. Like I said before, there is a long-term, very, very compelling value proposition with urgent care, and I don't think that's going to change. I think the landscape is becoming more competitive. It's becoming more intense. Some hospital operators are getting into the picture because they want to control the referrals or the access points to their hospitals. There's going to be competition between hospital providers. The insurers are in the business as well, and they want to control cost. I think that is going to continue. I think in the beginning there were, our strategy has been de novo growth, but as these networks of urgent care centers continue to consolidate, it is going to be acquisition. In a larger scale, there's going to be continued integration and consolidation in the marketplace. And I think over the intermediate term, I think there's going to be tremendous opportunities for urgent care providers that have significant scale and that are high quality. I mean, I think that's what is important. That have the metrics, that can prove their metrics, that have scale over a particular area or region, able to control that area. And I think that's where the opportunity is. There's going to be a flight to quality, and the multiples, I think, will still hold up for people that could prove their value, that are quality operators, that control a specific area or region that makes sense to the strategics. Some of the private equity people, it's a little, anybody getting into this game now from the private equity side looking to buy a platform and expand it is, in my estimation, is a little too late. I think if they're looking to integrate platforms, if they're looking to do special things with various acquisitions, that's one thing. But somebody starting a bunch of de novos and going to scale a platform or buy a small platform and try to develop it on the private equity side is getting into the business a little too late. However, I think the game is really, the party's really in full gear for the strategics. I think this is a market of consolidation, integration, and taking advantage of opportunities where they could get 1 and 1 and make it equal 3, not 2, by using other capturing markets, capturing referrals, decreasing costs, that type of thing. So high quality platforms that are scale, that have significant scale, they're ultimately the ones that are going to win.
All right, thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to some questions from the audience. All right, so our first question we have today comes from Renee Lohman, and they ask, the co-location and hybrid model now seemingly on the rise within what was formerly an episodic urgent care mode only. Does the panel agree that via the ACA and new opportunities for chronic care management that there will continue to be increasing inclusion of primary and urgent care under the same roof, as in the successful case of patient first? So we can hand that off to anyone who is willing to.
Yeah, and I can chime on this question, if that's okay. Good. Renee, that's a great question which you have, and I think that's a question which all of us as an operator think about, is that the model which is going to go. But if you see, like, urgent cares are not chronic care. If you look at the core of urgent care, of an efficient, not only efficient, but a core of urgent care, it's an episodic urgent care model. And if we dilute the core, we can include primary care, we can include orthopedic, there's no end to it. But if in a model we see a healthcare model, and if you put 4 players, if you can visualize urgent care, primary care, specialist, and hospitals. If all these 4 players, do something which is special for them. Primary care take care of chronic care patients, urgent care take care of acute patients or the patients who are well and they don't have primary care model, but we provide some kind of better technology solution for their health screenings. Specialists take care of specialist issues, and ER take care of life-threatening. It's a great model for the country because in this case, then every player is doing what they are best at. So I think that is a model which will survive in long term. As far as urgent care are concerned, I think they will participate in the primary care in the sense that a larger population who doesn't have a primary care, they need to have some kind of screening mechanism to make sure they know that if they are going into those 4 or 5 health risk conditions like diabetic, hypertension, those conditions. So healthcare will with the technology will be a better screener for them. And if they see the patient is going into those chronic conditions, they will be sent to a PCP. And I view in next 20 years that model is going to come. It's not going to change because the population, the technology, and the constant push for lower cost effective models will push our country to this model where these 4 players, they do their part and they do their part the best. And I think outcomes will be designed around it. So in short, can that be done? Yes. But is that a long-term solution for a better healthcare system? I don't think so, personally.
Thank you, Manoj. We do have one more question from the audience. And this next question is, where do individual doctors land in this landscape of networks and hospital systems? What are their opportunities?
Yeah, this is Blayne. Let me speak to that because I know a lot of what's been said is, hey, the small guys can't survive. This could be what the audience got from the picture. And I don't know that was directly what some of the speakers were meaning, because there's still roles, like they talk about the concierge medicine, et cetera. And I think that the entrepreneurial type physician just has to study their business and be very efficient in what they do, treat their patients very well, get involved in grassroots type efforts. Some of the busiest urgent care centers that I've seen, I'm talking about some that are profiting $1.5 million, and there are quite a few of those out there, are in these communities that they're very involved in. They're involved with the high school. They're involved with all the different activities. So there's a lot of opportunities for physicians that are driven and willing to study, willing to get out there and work. The challenge is the physicians that say, okay, this urgent care is all the rave, I'm going to hang a sign out there, and they sit in there and think that all the patients are going to just show up. That's where the challenge will be. But the entrepreneurial type physicians, like the 2 doctors that we have on here were a few years back, meaning that we're starting out, they got after it, studied, learned, they they treated their patients in the afternoons and weekends. They went and studied the business part and essentially had 2 full-time jobs. There's plenty of opportunity out there for those guys.
Let me expand on that just for a second as well. I agree 100%. I think that it depends on where in the country you're going to open a practice. If you open in a boutique practice or a practice where you're the physician and you have other doctors that work for you, and you're in an area where there's not an awful lot of competition, and you're able to prove your value proposition, work hard, there's always going to be space for you. But I've also found some doctors. There's a physician that I know, used to work for me when I was ER director. Said he wanted to get into the urgent care business. I heard you could pull a Brinks truck in the back of your center, and when the patients come in the front, you could just shovel the money into the Brinks truck coming out the back. Well, they have some type of delusion that there's a gold rush going on, but it's a high volume, low margin business. That's what it is. The ER is a lower or maybe a higher. It used to be a high volume, high margin business. Or a high cost business. Now it's it's probably still that, but the ER is a higher volume, the urgent care is a higher volume, lower margin business. So this gentleman opened up an urgent care, beautiful facility, spend more than, and my facilities look really nice, but this gentleman had a slate on the floor and the windows that you touch them. Every exam room had instead of a wall, was a big window into the exam room, and you flip a light, and the glass turns white. And he had 3 saltwater fish tanks in the waiting room, and he ran out of money, so he leased the X-ray equipment, but he bought the fish tanks, and the fish tanks cost $1,500 a month to service. He opened up a place around other competitors. Hard-working guy, great guy, fantastic doctor, but it's a setup for failure. You could have the best place, the best of intentions, the hardest work ethic, but you got to work smart. You got to pick your battles and go into a place where you're not going to fight with one hand tied behind your back. You're going to have the most opportunity for success, and that's, I think, going to be the key. These smaller operators are still going to do well if they find the right area to operate in and work hard. And it's going to be hard work. There's no truck coming into the back, shoveling your money out the back door. It's not that way anymore. It's the best performers are going to be the ones that are able to profit and do well with a higher volume, lower margin business.
Thank you. Now we have one last question before we have to wrap up our presentation. And that question is, what do you see as the future for imaging in urgent care? Will patients be able to get an ultrasound exam or a CAT scan in the future?
This is Blayne. It depends on your model. So there's, it was talked about before, what is urgent care? Meaning that some people would tell you that urgent care is these retail mid-level practitioners working in the grocery store or some little corner of grocery store. The higher advanced urgent care models, they have at least X-ray, and a lot of them have ultrasound, and then there's quite a number of them that have CT scanners. So I don't think that's across the board. It just depends on what your model looks like and what you're able to justify in your performance. Obviously, CT scanners have come down a lot. There's a lot of used ones you can buy, etc. But that's still a high-cost piece of equipment compared to a lot of other things that are in a urgent care center. So it just depends.
Thank you, Blayne. All right. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today as we look at the current state of the urgent care market. Once again, I want to extend some thanks to Dr. Graw, Dr. Lamelas, Manoj, Kumar, and Blayne Rush for their time and commitment to this webinar. If you would like a recording of this webinar, you can find it Monday at the Ambulatory M&A Advisor's website, www.ambulatoryadvisor.com. Once again, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Until next time, I'm Rich Romero, and have a great day.